that provide the best of your teaching, but also to do it in a way that is equitable, given what we know about students and about online education. So let's see, these are the goals for our session. It's broken down into 3 basic parts. The first part is we're going to discover what is important in the way of outcomes, and then design your course with the backwards design concept so that you can see what it is you want your students to know, and then design your course in a way to achieve those outcomes. The second is creating rapport and presence. That is the key to successful online learning. Putting students at the center of this conversation, meeting them where they are, is essential to creating the rapport and the presence. And then the last part is organizing your class for ease of student use. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've been on a lot of Zoom meetings since March. Have y'all?
Absolutely.
And I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when you're on Zoom meetings all day long, you get this level of what they call cognitive fatigue. Your brain cannot manage, and maintaining eye contact, feeling like you have to be totally present in that Zoom meeting is super exhausting as a teacher and also as a student. So simply just taking your face-to-face class and moving it online is not optimal for you or for your students. And here's some of the reasons why. So first, let's go and do our quiz. So the first quiz is the first link. So go ahead and go to that first link. And I'm going to jump over to the answer garden. Let me find the...
I've put it in several times, so it's question number 1.
Okay. Hang on. I'm going to open it up. So the question is, what makes a good face-to-face course? So type in your answers and then keep refreshing and you'll see more answers. Interaction is number 1.
Go ahead and refresh. It says Lynn just opened up question 1.
Human interaction, communication. Good. Keep going. So if we get more than one person that puts in the same answer, the words get bigger. This works really great when you have hundreds of people on a webinar. Look at that. Interaction, talking, communication, care, supportive teacher, human interaction, professor cares, engaging students. Okay, that all sounds super good. Looking at the next question is go to the second link and let us know what makes a good online class. Let me open that one up really quickly.
Number 2, but Lynn needs to open that up. Question number 2.
What makes a good online course? What makes an online course good? Communication. Now in the face-to-face course, it said interaction first, then communication. Interesting, right? Regular communication, teacher availability, good. Keep going, communication, interesting. Any more? What happened? That's it?
A lot of people are saying communication.
Yeah, it looks that way, huh? Humanizing, okay. Teacher availability, engaging students, regular communication. So let's
mention clarity.
What's that?
Jude mentioned clarity.
Clarity, okay. So this is what makes a good face-to-face class, interaction. And this is what makes a good online course. Do you think that communication is important in a face-to-face class?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that interaction is important in an online class.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to balance these two things out. I told Janet, I said, we're going to do these two answer gardens, and the ideal scenario will be if they're the same, if all the things are the same. And this is interesting because they're not. So I find this fascinating. Now, communication and interaction show up in both answer gardens. This is what you guys all believe. But I think that, if we look at interaction and communication as the two key components of what makes a good course in general, either face-to-face or online, then we're on the right track, right? Okay, so let's go back to here. I'm gonna present. Okay, so thinking about what it means to be have good communication and to be present and provide interaction online. We got to think about it pre-tech, pre-building your course in Canvas. We got to have some things to think about before we make these pedagogical decisions. So the first is, let's start with discovering what our students need to know. So activities, assignments, and assessments are the way that we normally do our teaching, either in class or online. In-class assignment activities generally look like small groups, discussions, working on things together, giving our students a problem and asking them to solve it. Rarely do our students sit isolated by themselves doing activities, and then we give them an assignment and they turn that in isolatedly, and then we assess them with quizzes and tests. Rarely does that happen in a face-to-face class. So in an online class, if you want to have the same level of interaction and not exactly the same, but if you want to have the same kind of robust activities, assignments, and assessments, you got to think about that in advance. So think of creative ways to engage your students together in order to practice key course components. And we're gonna, in the rest of this presentation, as well as in a million places on the online teaching resources page, we have lots of ways for you to do that. We want you to think about designing your assignments in a way that allow for student agency and, what does it say there? I have my Zoom in that space. Choice. Student agency and choice is really valuable in the online environment and also in the face-to-face environment. Janet and I and Michelle Fagundes and a few others in the meeting were in the culturally relevant teaching and learning Summer Institute last week and learned a lot about your student's voice and bringing your student's voice into your course so that what they are learning relates to them in their lives where they are. We need to evaluate the mastery of our students. We want to evaluate mastery of their concepts. This is more than just putting a tick on an SLO. It's having a demonstration of what they can do. And we want to think about using alternatives to testing when possible. Some things just need to be exams or quizzes, but other things, there are ways that you can assess their mastery of material in a way that allows for them to have some more agency in the presentation of what they know. And then one of the most important considerations is to consider how students may be still affected by the coronavirus and the stay-at-home quarantine orders. State is opening up. People are being allowed to go back to their regular lives, but the threat of the virus is still there, and it's gonna, and I'm so grateful to the leadership of our campus in looking around on Twitter and seeing how universities and independent colleges across the country are really battling right now with whether or not to bring their students and their faculty back in the fall. And it's really causing a lot of stress for students and for faculty. So we're lucky in that we get to stay online in the fall. But we have to make our courses something that it keeps our students safe, but also allows them to continue to move forward in their programs. Which brings me to this. The Education Trust West recently did a survey of students on how their lives have been affected by the coronavirus, and the infographic is listed there. And according to this, their lives have been extremely disrupted by this. Here's some statistics. 3 in 4 California college students are concerned about being on track to graduate. And it's even higher for students of color. So they don't know whether or not they're going to be able to get to where they need to be on the goal track that they had, that their pathway was presented for them prior to this happening. Look at those numbers. 75% are really worried about this. 95% had their classes canceled in the spring. Some classes canceled, or even in the summer. And many of them are debating whether or not to return to school in the fall. California students call for improvements in if remote learning continues into the fall. So these numbers are super significant and something for us to take a look at as we're going through this work today. 51% is the same for both instruction and course quality and studying tools. So in that respect, Janet and I feel like this college is on it because we're continuing these webinars through the summer and you guys are coming and you guys are using that remote the online teaching resources site, and you are trying to get yourselves more used to what it means to do your courses online. It requires some soul searching, some thinking, but we're doing it. And I think that's going to be hugely valuable for our students, and it's really super important to them. They need tutoring and support at 41%, they said, 37% for advising, and 34% collaboration for group work and projects. So while this collaboration part is not as valuable to them as the instruction and course quality, it still is important. It's not at a 10%. It's still important to them. So we need to serve our students by balancing the course outcomes with their needs. So taking a look at that infographic, I encourage you to click on the link and look at the whole thing, will help you to understand where they're coming from. The Education Trust West is a West Coast, I think it's a think tank, offshoot of Washington, does the same thing. Okay, so the second part, one of the second goals of our presentation today is that concept of meeting our students where they are with our instructor presence. This is what you said was the most important thing in a face-to-face class, was having that interaction. So these are some ways to create rapport and presence asynchronously. Okay, so these concepts come from The Key to Teaching Online, Rapport by Heidi Skurat-Harris and Rebecca Glazier. These women are at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock, and they did this great presentation on what it means and how to do it. So the video is linked there. It's a 50-minute webinar. It's good to watch because they break down exactly what this looks like. That's where you can get the examples of the things that are noted here on this slide. So active processing occurs in the brain of your students, and this is based on some data that is in a text that is linked on that presentation. When students attend to the relevant material, then they organize that material coherently, and then they integrate it with what they already know. So instructors have to present the material in such a way as to allow for that kind of processing to happen for students. And the ways to do that is chunking, highlighting, and connecting. Heidi has some great resources for how to do that. And in the presentation that I gave last spring on creating effective assignments, it also deals with these three concepts of chunking, highlighting, and connecting. The idea is that you give the information to your students in small increments where you've used things like bold or highlight in order to show them what's most important. And then also using textual cues in order to show them how these things connect either to what they already know or what they need to know for the class. So like I said, The samples are here in this video, but we're going to also link some more samples here. Janet has some good ones. I have some good ones. We just want to put them in the, I just didn't have time to do that before the session today, but we'll get them in there.
Lynn, if I could jump in just really quickly.
Of course.
Connecting back to the presentation you gave as well. And we had this conversation about whatever it is, however you're going to organize your material. And I have to go back and take a look at it and constantly fix it so that I'm actually presenting it in the same way. So whatever their high stakes assignments are, however I'm laying it out on the page, it is clear, it's easy to read, and it's consistent.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to add that in here too. So chunking, highlighting, connecting, clear, and consistent. Let's change that highlighting to a C. And then we've got something really fun going on here. What is that? It's not onomatopoeia. What's it called? Alliteration? Okay. All right. So moving on. So one of the goals is to create equitable course content. And we discussed some of these things in the last session that we did on humanizing online teaching that Janet did last week. Highly recommend that you take a look at that presentation if you weren't there. She's got amazing links and examples throughout there of what all of these things look like. So we can link back to that presentation in this one too, so it'll be easy for you guys to find. But one of the things that you can do is to create a liquid syllabus. A liquid syllabus is a space where students can access the information essential for the course outside of the course management system. So there's a variety of ways that you can do this. And the reason why this is important, and it's important to do it before your course begins, is because especially this fall. So think about it this way. This fall, we're going to get our onslaught of newly graduated high schoolers, right? And that's a group that is always, I always generalize like that. Often they have a difficult time transitioning to college from high school. And they don't understand what a course management system is. Now, a great number of these students will have been online this past spring as well, either through Zoom or through Google Classroom. So Google Classroom is what they might be familiar with. So to create something in Google, either a Google site or a Google document that has links to the relevant sections of your syllabus is the way to do the liquid syllabus. Janet has a great one that she uses on, I think it's S'more. Yeah. And then I use a Google Doc.
And Google Sites is great. And that is how to do that is linked in the last presentation.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, there's also infographics you can make. I saw a tremendous infographic on Twitter that had the weeks on one side, each of the key things that the students were supposed to do at the top, color coded, and then what happens every day in the columns. It was beautiful. So cool. So I'll post that in here too.
One other thing, Lynn, I think to talk about the liquid syllabus is the idea of the phone, that students are using their phone. So a liquid syllabus is easy for them to see on their phone, and they're not having to scroll back and forth to go from one line to the next.
Yep.
So one of the important reasons to have one as well.
And one of the best parts about Google is that it is, it translates to mobile automatically, so you don't have to do anything. And we have access to Google accounts through the college where you can get a Google Drive that has unlimited storage. So that is the way to go. And if you want to get one of those accounts, you can just contact your dean and they can contact IT to get that set up for you. If you're not using Google yet for managing your materials, I highly recommend that cloud storage. Okay, policies. Contract grading is a thing. This is something that we will bring up in the assessment webinar that we're going to do. Flexibility in late and retest policies is based on the theories in the Equitable Teaching Practices text that is coming around in divisions this spring and summer. And then giving your students lots of opportunities to revise after they practice. If your end goal is for your students to have the outcomes of the course, and your assessments are evenly weighted throughout the semester so that what they do in the beginning and what they do in the end is the same, then there's no measure for learning. Does that make sense? So there's debate on weighted grade books as well. But in my course, because it is a little bit, it's a, humanities course, liberal arts course where, students have, they write, their writing gets better when they practice it. In Mark's accounting class, they probably get better at practicing accounting formulas if they do it several times.
I certainly
Right?
hope so.
What's that?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, so any kind of low stakes ways that you can be evaluating how well they're practicing and then giving them opportunities to do it over. These are ways to create your equitable course content. And then student agency and access to you is also pretty key. At the beginning of the session today, before we began, we were talking about using the gradebook to message students through the default and also using default grading. Outreach to students who are not participating, being available to discuss options using Canvas tools, especially in the gradebook and in messaging, go a long way to provide for this. Like I said, Janet did a bunch of examples of this in last week's webinar. So again, we'll link to that. This is just to give you some idea of the type of thinking that's important to do before you sit down and make your content. Are we good so far? Okay, because I think we're moving on to section 2. Oh, we're in section 2. Okay, so we're still in the asynchronous mode right now. So asynchronous micro lectures are a way for you to have a lot of presence in your class, but to present the material to your students in small chunks and then give them an opportunity to practice concepts. So a mini lecture of no more than 10 minutes goes a long way to ensure their engagement. Assess understandings with low stakes reflections and discussions. VoiceThread is perfect for that. Janet is doing a bunch of, or work with a lot of people on VoiceThread through a CTX VoiceThread Summer Institute, but she's got a lot of materials related to VoiceThread on the site as well. But you can also do it in Canvas through discussion boards. Now that we have a way to embed video into our discussion boards, you can ask students to pause the video and write their response. There's lots of ways that you can gauge their understanding along the way throughout your micro lecture or at the end of the micro lecture. Okay. Asynchronous short concept videos are also valuable. You can humanize your class with short, less than 15-second videos to provide quick instructional tips. So I do this all the time, just with my phone. I'll think of something and I'll pick it up and I'll say, hey, I'm thinking of want, and then I just upload it to YouTube, caption it really fast, and then put it in an announcement or in a message to my class. Things like, just wanted to remind you to double check your MLA before you turn in your submission. Make sure you check the link on the assignment page or whatever it is. Those little videos, they can just click on them in their phone and get that information. Think of it like what you do at the beginning and the end of your class. Just want to remind you to get out your homework. Just want to remind you to don't forget to do this homework or whatever it is. So you can do that in these little videos and just present them. I do them once a week. However often you want to do them is fine. So asynchronous PowerPoints or Google Slides or screen captures with voiceover is another way that you can present your concepts in micro lectures. They don't necessarily have to be you with a whiteboard, although the more you have your face in your videos, the better. It's my dog. Oy vey. Anyway, all of these products are linked for you here for ways that you can do this. The college has access to Adobe. And if you saw the email from Patrick yesterday, he said that we are doing some new login procedures for PeopleSoft. He says it's going to be the same as what we do with Adobe. So I don't know if you guys have tried to access Adobe, but all you do is you go to this link, and then when you sign in with your Cerritos College email address, and it'll take you back to that portal that we have to use with the two-process authentication, where they give you a number in your phone and you have to put that in to log in. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Does this sound familiar? And that gives you access to everything in Adobe Suite. You can use Adobe Spark, which is for videos. You can make fun graphics. We're thinking maybe a little later in the summer we can do some tutorials on Adobe. It's fantastic, unbelievable. Camtasia, Mark did a great presentation on Camtasia last week. I don't know how many site licenses we have for Camtasia, but you can check it out at that link. Screencast-O-Matic is free. You can do a screencast very simply in Screencast-O-Matic with a voiceover. Clips and iMovie are Apple products that you can do right on your phone or your tablet. They don't necessarily do your actually, they do. If you take image screen captures of your PowerPoints slides and just dump them into Clips or iMovie, then you can voice over on those there as well. And Snagit is another TechSmith product like Camtasia, but it's much, much cheaper and has similar capabilities. So these are a bunch of tech ways that you can create asynchronous content. And these take time. There's a learning curve to all of this, but it's valuable. And I think a lot of us are doing this now in some ways.
And if I could interrupt just for one moment. One thing too, if you feel very comfortable with Zoom, you could do a little Zoom meeting on your screen. You can trim it, and then you can add it to whatever. You're not editing a lot except the beginning and the end, but I use that a lot. And then Lizette wrote, an Adobe workshop would be great. They have tons of programs available to us. So that's something for us to think about, Lynn, in the future. And then Linda, yeah, so we are good. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot about Zoom. You can record Zoom by yourself. It doesn't have to be a meeting. It can just be you. Record it, and then you can use that. I did that forever on my my little concept videos. So that's a great thought also. Okay, so now this is why you all came to the meeting, and I waited till the end to give it to you. Creating rapport and presence synchronously. With some creative thinking, your synchronous meetings can be engaging and allow for student voice. And let me tell you something. Back in March and April, I was no can do, no synchronous learning. It is exhausting. It's too hard. Nobody should have to do it. And I've said many times throughout this process that online learning is something that I'm a huge proponent of, but I didn't want ever to do my entire life online. And all of us are doing our whole lives online right now. And that's a lot. So if you think of your students having 4 classes and doing 4 classes a week, 12 to 16 hours of classroom meetings in Zoom, that's just too much. But I have to say that I've become a bit of a convert on the value of synchronous learning and synchronous interaction. Because you said interaction is the first thing, the most important thing in a face-to-face class. We have to try and create that in an effective way in an online environment. Because you said communication is the most important thing of an online class, if you're not providing the proper amount of communication that links with what you want students to do synchronously, it's not going to work either. So it's got to be both. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's some do's for live video conferencing. Oh, shoot. I forgot to take out that link at the bottom. These come from Janet and my experience, not from this video. So I'll take those out. Do. Present the content with opportunities to engage. This is what I was saying before about using a discussion board where you ask your students pointed questions, have them interact with each other. That can be done asynchronously. If you're doing that in a synchronous environment, you can do it with polls. You can do it with breakout rooms. Those are probably the two most effective. Allow for a no camera option or for virtual backgrounds for your students, because often they're in a room with other people, or they're, you know, I know I've had students who've done their synchronous meetings in the closet because it's the only place where they can have quiet. So whatever you can do to sort of accommodate where they are right now is valuable. Always record your sessions and make those available for, oh shoot, I forgot to record this one.
Lynn, I recorded it. I started a little bit
okay.
late. I recorded it. We were still on the first slide or the second slide, so you're good.
Oh man, okay. Always record the session, like make that happen early because you can always cut out the beginning. Build reflection and assessments to show engagement. So you can use your outside tools, use those collaborative software, VoiceThread, Pronto, Google. If you set up a collaborative Google Doc ahead of time, or something like Answer Garden, like we did at the beginning of the session here, your students can go in and out of your session, work on those things, and come back in to your session.
Lynn, oh, sorry, if I could say one thing about Google, and I know I won't take your Pronto because that Pronto idea is fabulous, but I will tell you that you could do these scaffolded notes as well. You know, so I had a student who taught, and at the very end with Teacher Track, and he actually taught online, and he came up with 3 different Google Docs. So we worked on a little bit of one, and then we did something else, and then we worked on a second one, and it was nice. We went back and forth. Everybody did not see all the material right at the beginning, you know, so they only got a little bit at a time. So there's a lot of creativity that you could do with Google.
Yeah, absolutely. And allowing your students to go in and out of the meeting is really, really valuable. Using breakout rooms is great. I don't know if any of you have not used breakout rooms in Zoom. Is there anybody who's not used it? Any? I can't see. Jenna will have to let me know. It is a game changer in Zoom for sure. And here's the thing I learned last week.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, there's somebody who has not used it.
Okay. So we can walk you through how to use them and the value of them. One thing that happens during the breakout rooms is that you can't see what's happening in them. You have to join them. So think about it in the same way that you might do small groups in your classroom. You tell students to work on a task together, and then you float from group to group. That's what you'd be doing in the breakout rooms.
Lynn, if we have maybe a minute or two at the very end, maybe we could just do a quick practice breakout.
Yeah, we can do that. Sure. Yeah, we're going to have time.
Okay.
Last week in the Summer Institute that we did on culturally relevant teaching and learning, it was 12 hours of Zoom sessions over the course of 3 days. It was amazing. It was so valuable. We were taking breaks every hour, 10 or 15 minutes every hour, which is exactly what we're asking our students, or what the college provides in a synchronous or in a regular face-to-face class, but you need to take them. Allow for the chat and interactions function. Some people like to turn that off. It's valuable for students to be able to connect with each other in the same way they would in your class. And one of the other things that was really valuable last week is we had time for workshopping concepts during the live class. So the class was going on, but everybody was muted and working on whatever they wanted to work on. And then the moderator, the class instructor, would come back in every few minutes saying, we got about 10 more minutes. If you need help, either raise your hand or put something in the chat and we can have a private chat, or we can go to a breakout room and talk individually. There's so many ways that you can allow for giving your students time on task in the live video conferencing meeting. It's a fantastic option. Okay, don'ts in your video conferencing. Don't exclusively lecture, because we just learned micro lectures are preferable to just doing your lecture in class. Now, even if you're demoing, okay? So I know in a lot of STEM, they demo. So they write on a whiteboard and they're showing their students how to do something. Demo those with breaks so that and give your students a minute assessment. What do you get about this? What do you not get about this? And try and gauge where it's going the same way you would in a synchronous or face-to-face class. And your students may be more apt to raise their hand and say they're having difficulty if they can do it privately in a live Zoom conference. Just simply don't take your entire class online for the full 2 hours it meets, or hour, 15 minutes, or whatever. Don't make the attendance mandatory, because if you go back up to the very first slide, coronavirus has vastly affected our students' lives, and it will continue to do so. We don't know if their work schedules or whatever are going to change, despite the fact that they sign up for courses in the fall. So recording your session and allowing your students to watch it online and to do some sort of assessment for watching it, giving them some sort of credit for watching it, is valuable. Don't use the breakout rooms and just never visit, because then you don't know what's going on in there and it may not be valuable.
Hi, Lynn.
Don't disable the chat feature.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, go ahead. We're done.
Okay, so Tomoko asked this question, and I will have you answer it, and then I'll share what I do as well. It says, what is the college's policy on student attendance in the fall of 2020?
I think that with online classes, the way that we manage attendance in a typical regular asynchronous online class, which has been part of the college culture for many years, is through regular and effective contact. If the student is not participating, you will have the opportunity to reach out to them and get them the help they need in order to participate. If you're talking about attendance at a live.
Oh. Lynn went frozen for a second. I'm gonna wait one moment and then I'll keep talking. She'll probably come back in a second.
Class meeting. I think what happened?
You went frozen for a minute. Okay. But it was just like 10 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay. I just said that it's important to allow for attendance in a variety of ways.
The way,
so go ahead.
Okay, it was only 10 seconds, but what I do for attendance, and I'm making it, I used to do it a little bit less transparently. Now I'm making it super transparent. Every week on Wednesdays and Fridays, those are just the 2 days that I chose, I have a check-in assignment. The check-in assignment, it just is a low stakes assignment that they're doing already. On the assignment itself, I have a big thing that says check-in. And what I'm doing is I am using that for attendance. So I'm going to be using Canvas for attendance. And if they do the assignment, then they are checked in as attendance. And then I will take that attendance, download it, and send it in like I do every semester for my face-to-face classes. Mm-hmm. And I've let students know that participating equals attendance. It's not about the grade in the class, and it doesn't mean that they will automatically pass the class if they do all the attendance check-ins, because none of them are related to the high stakes projects at all. They're just showing me that they are there. So, and I make it really, really evident that it's a check-in assignment, and it's regular every Wednesday and Friday. That's how I'm doing it for the fall and even for the summer.
But if you did choose to do your class synchronously in the fall, you're still going to have some async components, I'd imagine. So anything that you can do that allows for students to show what they learned from the synchronous meeting, that'd be a way to take attendance as well.
What I do, Lynn, too, with that is if they can't attend the meeting, they watch the video and they take like a half a page to a page of notes. So that's kind of a carrot to get them to come to the meeting in the first place. But if they can't make it, then that's an alternative for them.
Right. And that, of course, is part of your thinking that, you know, in part one of our presentation, we talked about the pre-tech. What are you going to do to think through that ahead of time? And then communicate that to your students. Okay.
Okay, so one more second, Lynn. Tamar, I think I answered that question for you about encouraging them to attend. If they don't attend, they take notes. Okay, Go ahead, Lynn. Sorry.
Did we get all the questions answered?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, we're winding up. Those were the three things. Pre-tech, think about where your students are, understand that they are in difficult times right now, just as everybody is. Number two, think about your async ways of presenting the material and what we wrote on the answer garden. Interaction, communication. Those are your number keywords that you want to pay attention to when you're designing. And number three, how to do your synchronous and asynchronous components in such a way that allow for a little more student agency and voice. Okay. Online learning is here to stay. Thank the Lord. So this comes from the California Community College Distance Education Report that's linked there. The total FTES for distance education, oh my God, look at those numbers. They doubled in 10 years. Doubled in 10 years. So people want this. This was prior to the pandemic. This was published in 2017. So we suspect that people are still going to want online education after this is over because of what they've been able to accomplish in flexibility. Here's another tidbit of info that I thought was real fascinating. The success rates in online learning is no different or very little difference in the success rates with face-to-face. So I want that to sink in a little bit because so many people are going, online doesn't work, and they're not going to be as successful. They can be. It's about instructional design and about all of the things that we've been covering, you know, in the past couple of weeks. But when you disaggregate, the distance education rates by ethnicity are vastly different, and especially among Black and African American students. We have an opportunity right now to do better for those students. Paying attention to culturally relevant and culturally responsive teaching practices are going to allow us to do that. Things like equitable grading, things like providing for alternative assessments other than just a simple test. We know, based on a lot of data, that Black and African American and Latinx students are treated differently in education. I know that for individuals, we would say, oh, we never do that, but systemically that happens. And as an institution, we need to change that. And this is what I was saying when I saw this data, is that now is the time to start to make this shift. It's the perfect time to start to make this shift because everybody is doing it. Everybody has to be brought to higher success rates. We can do it. So here's how we do it. Rethink your curriculum. Trust your students. They want to be there. They want to learn. 2, balance your synchronous and asynchronous. Be present and human, and you will get 100% success. Janet and I have gotten a wealth of information from following some really successful and highly engaged educators on Twitter. I recommend that you join Twitter for professional reasons and start following. I don't follow anybody except for educators. I only follow hashtags connected to my, because Twitter can be a hotbed of mess. But I've learned so much there, it's crazy. Okay, so follow us on Twitter, follow the people we follow. You'll learn a lot about online education, or email us with questions. Okay, so let me stop this share. And that's it.
Lynn,
We got 10 minutes.
Lynn, can we?
You want to do a breakout room?
Yes, let's do a breakout room. Would you like to do it, or do you want me?
Well, let me pose a question in the chat first so that everybody can see it. What is your number one online tool practice that you can share?
While Lynn is doing that, I want to share with you that at the bottom, if you are leading a Zoom, at the very bottom, there's a place just to the right of closed captioning called breakout rooms. And if you click on that, it will guide you through making the number of rooms based on the number of participants. And it's really actually very easy. It's always scary the first time, but you have the breakout rooms. You could move people around. Like, for example, when I had somebody who was not able to hear, I made sure that his support was with him. I did that on purpose. And so you can move around people, and you can also be in and out of breakout rooms. Okay, Lynn, do you want to share your question from the chat?
It's in the chat. What is your number one online tool or practice that you can share?